Alright, in this video we are going to look at how to convert, or not convert, but we're going to look at how to get some currency exchange tables, and I'm actually pulling these from xrates.com. This will use Tasker, and we're just going to send all this stuff over to KLWP. We're going to use what's called the HTML DOM. I did a tutorial not too long ago on the XML DOM, and now we're going to look at some HTML DOM. I learned a lot of this stuff over at W3 Schools, as well as from a good friend of mine, David Pincher. Of course, this is just all over the internet, but he's been helping me quite a bit in understanding how to navigate the DOM, the HTML DOM, the document object model. And he's also been very helpful in sharing how to send these variables over to KLWP much faster, all of this using a JavaScript. So thanks, David. Without your help, man, I wouldn't be able to do this. But without further ado, let me go ahead and show you what we're talking about. As you can see here, we do have some conversions. In this case, $1 US equals this stuff, and it's pulling it from this table right here. As you can see, these numbers here are what we're getting. And we can actually cycle through these. Here's some more, and it's just pulling all these here. Let's see if everything's matching up. The Indonesian, so that, yeah, everything's matching quite nicely. And not only that, a little perk too, if we let me come on here to the end. So the last one I see up here on this table, I think sometimes they get a little bit out of order. As you can see, it says the Lithuanian litas is the last one we see here. Well, the reason why that's the case is because if I go to view page source, I'm getting this information from right here. All of these are what I'm pulling. And if you look at this stuff here from the source code, down here the last one is the Lithuanian litas, or however you say that, but I am pulling that number right there. It is rounding this a little bit, or maybe this needs to be refreshed. So I'm just refreshing that right now, and let's see if it's going to, I guess now it's not matching that perfectly. Now it is. So these things are updating on the fly. As you can see, now it matches perfectly when I refresh the page and I refreshed my task. And not only that, we can tap on this word here and it should open up a web page, and it should show that exact little graph, like $1 US is equal to this stuff. So we can pull up all of these links for each one of these conversions as well. Now, going into Tasker and having a look, what we have to do here, we're going to create two tasks. One task, and this is great, this is one thing that David shared with me, is we're going to create a KLWP broadcast task. And inside of this thing, we have a send intent. I have done a tutorial on this recently, but basically, this one task, we can use this to send variables over to KLWP when we incorporate this into our JavaScript. So I've mentioned this before, you know, type these things in. The two pieces that are different are these two right here. Notice we got local variable par1 and par2. Think of them as parameters. So when we go do our JavaScript, we can do a variable name to send over to KLWP, and then we can do a variable value to send over to KLWP. And we're going to incorporate that task, everything else in here, broadcast receiver, but type those in exactly like you see them, and we can refer back to this task later on in the tutorial. So this is the main task. Currency. There's only two things. You know, the JavaScript really does simplify the amount of actions you have to do inside of a task or task in this case. So we're doing a HTTP GET, and the web address is nothing but this right here. I'm assuming you could change this to get whatever currency you want to convert to. And I'm copying and paste that right here in this HTTP GET. Over in the JavaScript, this is where I'm going to do a little bit of helping you become a little bit more familiar with the document object model. Some other things too, you know, I've mentioned this in a previous tutorial. There are some websites online that mention this here, but this is kind of like to get the ball rolling, to tell it, hey, we're getting ready to parse this stuff. And the global right here with the HTTPD, that is that web address right there, view source, all that stuff right there. That's what we're doing. We're viewing this stuff here, and we're getting ready to parse it. So inside of this source code, what we have, you can learn about this over at the W3 schools, but we can get elements by class, we can get elements by tag, we can get elements, what else do I have in here? We can get attributes, all that stuff. We can navigate this thing to pull this information from right here. So if I created a variable doc type all that stuff in, and then my variable I have table. This is going to look through this thing, this entire document, and we're going to get elements by class name, tables, sorter, rates table. And that is going to be this class right here, table, sorter, rates table. And basically when it does that, it's pulling pretty much all of this stuff all the way down to, whoops, let's back up a little bit. Kind of hard to scroll at the same time, but it's right there. So it's getting, if I'm not mistaken, that's where it ends. But nonetheless, it's pulling all this stuff. And what I'm interested in getting are the names. I'm interested in getting the value. And I'm interested in getting this link here that will take you straight to that graph. As you can see here, if I click on that link, this is what we saw on the cell phone a moment ago. It may not have been the British pound, but nonetheless, we can get all these graphs by getting a link. So all that stuff's getting pulled. Well, it's looking for that. We're getting elements by class name. It says get elements by class name, table, sorter, rates table, and then you have to put that 0 in square brackets because it wants to look for that first class that's called that. And you know, JavaScript, it does start indexing at 0, so it's really pulling that stuff I just highlighted over here a moment ago. Now you could type all of this stuff in one long thing, but I want to break it down for you piece by piece. This is navigating the entire source code. Now we're inside of all this stuff, and now once we get inside of there, so I want to get. So I'm taking that variable table, which is all of that stuff, dot get elements by tag name, and we're looking for TD. So when we're inside of this class table, sorters, rates table, when we're inside of this class right here, which is all this stuff, we're going to look for the TD tags, which is this one, this one, this one, and as you can see, there's a bunch of them. As a matter of fact, I think there's 165 of them. So let me go ahead and show you some things before we go through the rest of this stuff here, because this is where we actually do the stuff to send it over to KLWP, but I want you to understand a few things. So let's go ahead and do an alert. Alert is a way we can get something to pop up in our JavaScript. Okay, I got that one blocked down here, but let's do alert and let's see how many pieces are in this get. So I'm going to do get.length. That's a JavaScript code, assuming you know a little bit of JavaScript. Let's play this and see what happens. 165. So there's 165 of these TD tags because I'm doing this variable and I want to get the length of it. There's 165 of these tags that sit inside of this stuff here. And the reason why is because there's really 55 conversions that are on this table. If there's 3 TD tags per one name, then 55 times 3 is 165. So what we can also do from here, let's go ahead, let me show you how to pull the Argentine peso or the Australian dollar or all of these here. Well, what you may notice is this. I'm going to go to get, and if I go to get 0 dot enter HTML. Okay, let's alert that and see what happens. Argentine peso. So that's TD0. That's the first TD tag that sits inside of this class called table sorter rates table. Now you might say, okay, I got you. That's get 0. What is get 1? So let's alert. Let's get 1 dot enter HTML. And my play button's gone away. Okay, now it's back. So I'm going to press play again. Now notice what it's doing is it's getting, I said get 1. So it's looking at this tag. This is 0. This is get 1. So it's pulling some of this stuff, as you can see here, the ahref, la 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 la, with the 15.904. So that's what it's pulling there. Now, if all I want to get is names, what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to do get 0. This is get 1. This is get 2. This will be get 3. So if I come in here and do a get with a 3, and we play this, notice it's going to pull the Australian dollar. So you may notice, okay, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. If I go to get 6, it should pull this one right here. So let's go do get 6. And let's play this and give it a sec, that play button to come back. So I'm going to play, boom, as you can see, it is getting those. So notice multiples of 3. That's something we're going to have to tie into our little function that we have down here to get the names of these currencies. Now let's talk about how to get the actual value. To get the value, you may have noticed that number did pop up earlier. but we don't want to get all of this other stuff. All I want to do is get strictly that thing right there. So inside of get, let's do get1, and let's do .enter HTML for right now. That should show this stuff right here. And as you can see, that's exactly what it's showing right there. Well, I want to chop some of this stuff out. We don't have to do regex. What we can do inside of get1, we can say dot get elements by tag name, and we want to do the tag A. Notice that tag A right there. So that's another tag that's sitting inside of this tag. So tag name, and I'm going to do A, and now I want to do .enter HTML. Let's see what happens when we do the alert on get1. That's going to be the get1 right here, and we should be pulling this information right there. Let's see what happens. Okay, it says undefined, so I didn't do something right. Oh yeah, get elements by tag name A, and then I need to put 0 because it's the first time that tag shows up in there. This should work now. Let's double check. And as you can see, the 15.904597, that's exactly what it's pulling right there. So going back to the names, get 0, get 3, get 6, get 9, get 12. Well, this is get 1, okay? This is get 2, this is get 3, this is get 4. So to get 4, if I come in here and change this to a 4, and let's play, hopefully we should be pulling this 1.3222227, and let's see what we got. Boom. As you can see, we are pulling that information right there. So hopefully you're seeing a pattern here. The names go on multiples of 3, and then to get this thing here, if this is get 0, this is get 1. And this is get 3, this is get 6. Or excuse me, get 0, get 1, get 3, get 4 to get that thing right there. This will be get 6, this will be get 7. So notice if I come down here and change this thing to a 7, 0.3769, boom, it's that thing right there. So we're getting those. 2 things down, 1 thing to go. We got the name, I've showed you how to get the conversion, and now we want to get this link right here. So for example, I want to get that right there. This link. Well, notice that link also has the www.xrates.com, whereas back here in the source code, it doesn't have that stuff. So we're going to go into KLWP and just type that in when we go get all these variables and show them on our device. But nonetheless, how do we get just the URL? Well, that's going to be the last piece we're going to tie into this function. And what we want to do is, instead of us getting elements by, well, we got get elements by tag name A dot enter HTML. Well, what we want to do now is we want to get attribute. I think that's how it's done, just like that. So get 7, well, here's get 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and we want to get this attribute right here. The correct terminology, I get it mixed up from time to time, but all of that stuff is discussed here at W3 Schools. So we are doing various ways of getting this information from the source code. But let's play this and let's see. Get 7, so 036. We should be seeing USD, AMP, or whatever, BHD in the alert. Oh, where did I mess up at? Oh, what attribute do we want to get? We want to get the href, my bad. So href. And now if we test this, boom. So USD to BHD, that's exactly what we have there. And it's knocking out all this HTML stuff, so it's pulling the correct URL. And again, if I click on that, it's going to pop this up, and as you can see, that graph USD to BHD is exactly what we have. We don't have to worry about the amount equals 1. I guess that's like $1 US, but I'm not too concerned with that. It shows up fine on my device. I don't need to change anything there. So all these things that I've showed you so far, we have to tie all of this stuff together into a function, and then we're going to let all of this go over to KLWP, and we're going to do all of this inside of the JavaScript. So I don't need this alert stuff anymore. I'm just going to block that out. So boom, that shouldn't run anymore. So now I have a function, and I'm going to do a for loop. For loops, you can learn about that. The JavaScript that I've learned. I mean, David Pincher and we've talked quite a bit. or chatted quite a bit through Google Plus, and then what was it, Code Academy, just all sorts of random places online learning about JavaScript, doing loops and stuff like that. But remember, this was like get 0, get 3, get 6, get 9, get 12 to get the names. So I want to start, I'm going to have two variables here, for I equals 0 and y equals 1. And as long as I is less than num, and then what do we want to do in this side of this loop? For each time we run this loop, I is going to come back and we're going to add 3 to it. Whereas the y value at 1, it's just going to increase by 1. That's what y plus plus does. So when this thing runs, I is going to be 0. So it's going to be like a 0, zeros in here. The y's are going to be 1s. And then when it runs again, the I becomes a 3, the y becomes a 2. It runs again, I is going to become 6, the y is going to become a 3. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, blah, blah, blah for the y's. 0, 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21, etc. for the i's. I hope that makes sense. Now we have various pieces inside of here. So first thing, let's send over the name. Now perform task is what we can do inside of a JavaScriptlet to perform that task I mentioned at the very beginning of the video when I said KLWP broadcast. So perform task, put that in quotes, comma, 10. I'm not quite sure about the 10. It may have something to do with the priority or something like that, but put the 10 there. And then this is going to be parameter number 1. If you recall, in that KLWP broadcast, we had two parameters. We had %par1, %par2. Par1 is going to be the name of the variable. Well, no pun intended, or no, this is just coincidental that I called it name. Basically, I'm talking about this. Name. And then notice I had that in quotations and then I'm putting plus y. So this would be like name 1. And since y increases by 1 every time this loop runs, it'll be name 1, name 2, name 3, name 4, name 5. Well, what do we want that value to be? This is parameter number 1, comma. What do we want the value to be? This is what I showed you earlier. Get whatever, whether it be 0, 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21, because I is going to increment by 3 every time this thing runs. And notice I does start at 0. It's going to increment by 3. So this right here will be a 0, a 3, a 6, a 9, a 12, a 15, a 18. So it's going to get these from those tags up here. Remember how we called that variable get? And we're getting them by tag name. That's all that stuff I was showing you up here. All these various alerts I was testing out before we dove into this crazy function. So get 0, get 3, get 6, get 9, dot, enter HTML. That's exactly how we get the names. Well, guess what this does? We don't have to create an array. All it's going to do is send that stuff over to KLWP, just like that. It's great. And essentially what we're doing there is we're going to send over 55 names. And the reason why it's going to be 55 names, it's going to be 55 of all this, because this function that we're running here, this function takes a parameter that I just call num, and notice num gets used there. Well, what is num? When you call upon this function, assuming you know a little bit about JavaScript, heck, probably some of you know even more than I do, but when you call on a function, you give it a parameter. In this case, I'm doing get.length. And if you recall earlier, get.length was 165. So we run this thing here, I equals 0, and as long as I is less than, in this case, 165 of these TD tags in here, it's going to continue running this thing. And it's not going to run it 165 times, it's actually going to run it 55 times because I does not increment by 1 in this loop. I increments by 3. So it's going to go 0, 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21, and it's going to keep doing this loop as long as it's less than num. In this case, that number parameter is going to be the length, the number of tags, TD tags that we have inside of this code that we're pulling. Alright, so that's how we send the name over. Well, let's perform task KLWP broadcast, comma, 10, comma. Now, this is my other variable. I called it convert. Convert is just, I'm trying to get this right here. You can call it whatever you want. This is just a name that we're going to have to remember when we go back into KLWP. Well, just like this was name 1, name 2, name 3, name 4, this is going to be convert 1, convert 2, convert 3, convert 4. This is going to be these values here. Well, do you remember how we got these values? Remember, we did get elements by tag name, the tag name A, or tag right there, that A right there, And 0, don't forget the 0, you don't have to put a variable there. It's always going to be that first tag, and that's index is 0, dot enter HTML. That's how I was showing you how to get just these numbers out of this source code earlier. Now notice what I have here though. Do you remember how up here, this is get 0, get 3, get 6, get 9, get 12. Well, this one down here is going to be one higher. Notice I have get I plus 1. So when I is 0, this right here is going to be 0 plus 1, so it's going to do a get 1. That's what's going to make it go to this piece. And if you recall earlier when I was going through this showing you the patterns, if this was 0, this was 1. This is get 3, so this will be 3 plus 1, get 4. This is get 6 right here, so this will be get 6 plus 1, which is going to be 7. That's how you have to code it so all of this stuff runs at one time. So that's going to be I plus 1, and then again, get elements by tag name A. Don't forget your 0, dot enter HTML. This is going to pull these dollar amounts that you see here. All right. Had you wanted to get the reverse way, again, what I'm doing here is I'm doing US dollar to whatever currency, but you can reverse that. You can take the currency and convert it back to US dollars. You would have to do a different get. It'd be like get 0, and this would be the get 2. This would be get 3, then we'd be get 5. Of course, it's pulling that whole thing, but that's how you break it apart, by getting elements by tag names, .enter HTML, and then last but not least, the link inside of here. So it's going to be the same idea, KLWP broadcast, comma 10, and then I'm calling this variable link. So it'll be link 1, link 2, link 3, link 4, get I plus 1, because we're pulling it from the same get piece. This is get 1. Well, this would be get 4. But recall, I did show you how to get this link. We get elements by tag name A, very similar to what we did up here. However, now, once we put our 0, we want to get attribute, and that attribute that we want to get is the href. So that's going to pull these little links right here. And all of that right there, that function, we can call upon it, get stuff, because that's what I call this function. Variable get stuff is this function. So we call upon it, we do get.length, that's going to be that 165, and it runs this loop. All right. And then one more thing that I want to send over to KLWP is I want to perform task, KLWP broadcast, comma 10, comma, and I just called this number. That was the parameter. So this is going to be the name of another variable over in KLWP, and I want this to be get.length divided by 3. That's going to be 165 divided by 3, which is going to be 55. The reason why I want that is because if that ever does change, it would continue to pull the other ones. Should it be more than 55 or less than 55, when we divide by 3, if you count all these things here, all these various names, there's 55 of them, or you can look back here and there's 55 of them in this part of the table right here. So I'm going to send that over to KLWP, and this down here was just me experimenting too as I was learning this stuff and figuring it out, trying to wrap my head around it. So I'm blocking all that stuff out. In JavaScript, if you put 2 little backslashes like that, you block out that part of the code. So that's the important piece. I hope you kind of got somewhat of an idea of how to get pieces from an HTML document, whether it be hrefs, enter HTML. There are other things too that you can look at over at W3 Schools. Well, that's the JavaScriptlet. That's the only 2 things we need. Let's go ahead and run this. It may take a little second for it to actually run it, but it's done. I can exit out of here, and we're going to go back to the home screen. And now this is obviously we got to set this up, so let's go ahead and do that now. Going into KLWP. And if we go over, this is going to be in a component. This will be shared on KLWP toots, so currency converter. Inside of this component, I have 2 globals. One of the globals I called nums. It's just a text global variable, and I'm broadcasting tasker for that global or for that variable that I sent over. Remember that KLWP broadcast where I did get.length divided by 3? Well, 165 divided by 3 is 55, so that number is right there. Just in case that ever changes, tasker will see it. It'll send it over to KLWP, and then I can code this to where this stuff will still show. And then I have another global variable called count, and I just gave it a value of 0 for right now. So those are the only two variables we need. Of course, you may want to make yours look a little bit better than mine, but nonetheless, here we go. Let's talk about how do I want to approach this? Well, okay, the basic piece, 55 currency conversions. That's the GV num, so if that ever changes, I can see it there, but everything else, I'm just kind of typing stuff in. All right, so that's nothing too crazy there. The stat group up here at the top. So we got our buttons. Now, here's what I have displayed here are 10 values at one time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All right. And basically what I'm doing is I'm taking 10 times count. I have to get to that in a second. Let's look at this button right here. So if we go to touch this button right there, that's what's going to cycle through them like this way, kind of backwards, I guess you can say. So toggle global switch the count, and here is the code that I have. If GV count is greater than 0, because I'm trying to count backwards. So if my count, GV count is greater than 0, I want to subtract 1 from it. But if it's not greater than 0, then what I want to do is I want to do the floor. Now this is automatically, floor is referred to as automatically rounding down. So if we take GV nums, which was 55, and we divide it by 10, that's going to be 5.5. But floor means it's automatically going to round it down, so 5.5 rounds down to 5. So either it's going to be subtracting 1 from GV count, and if it's not greater than 0, it's going to return it back to whatever this value may be. Just in case we ever have more than 55 currencies, this will automatically pull that information from Tasker over to KLWP, and this will change dynamically. But heck, if we always have 55 currencies at this website, we don't really have to worry about all that crazy stuff. But I think it's worth mentioning that you can tie in these globals when you're toggling globals. So I'm like using other globals to toggle a global, so to speak. And now let's go to the right arrow. So if we touch it, this is where we want to increase. So I want to increase. If GV count is less than that same math utilities floor GV nums divided by 10, in this case that's saying if GV count's less than 5 right now, because 55 divided by 10, rounded off, automatically round down, that'll be 5. So if GV count's less than 5, we want to add 1 to it. And if it's not less than whatever that number is, we want to go back to 0. So GV count, by us toggling this the way it is, GV count's going to be somewhere between 0 and this number. In this case, it's between 0 and 5. And we can go back and forth. We can go 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or we can go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And we can cycle through them like that. Alright, so those are our two buttons. The one in the middle is just for me to do that task shortcut to refresh it. So task shortcut, you know, I've done this in several videos. There's the task shortcut, and I want to run the currency. So boom. Alright. Now, what about the text? All this text stuff that you see. So I got a stat group and I just got several text items. I'm going to go right here. Now, I'll tell you what I can do as well. I'm going to come in here and add one more piece of text down here at the bottom, as you can see. And I'm going to do GV count. Alright, so right now GV count is 0. So if I go through this, notice GV count's changing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then it goes back to 0 because that's what these buttons do. It toggles it. You may see a 5.0 in here from time to time, but that's not messing up anything. It's all good. So that's what's changing. Now, how do I get these things to show up? So 0 is like page 1. It's going to be the first 10 things that come from this source code. And as you can see, that's exactly what we should be seeing. Argentine peso, so it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So Chinese is the last one. Yep. And you may say, okay, are they the same value right now? They may be, they may not be. You know how KLWP, the advanced editor, does not update exactly, but once we go back to the home screen, everything will be fine. All right, so let's look at the text. Each one of these looks a little something like this. It's going to take, so we're broadcasting for Tasker, and if you recall in our JavaScriptlet, I had one of my variable names was name. And it would be name 1, name 2, name 3, name 4, name 5 because of that variable y that I used in my JavaScriptlet. Well, the thing is, I want to retrieve name, but I don't always want it to be name1. I want it to be whatever 10 times GV count plus 1 is. Well, right now, GV count, if you notice, GV count was 0. Well, 10 times 0 is 0, plus 1 gives us 1. So this will be name1. And then I want to get that currency value. If you remember in our JavaScript, I called it convert. That's going to be convert1. Now let's look at another one right beneath it. So we got that one. Now let's go to this second one here, Australian dollar. Now notice GV count is still 0. So it's going to run the same type of code, except now it's going to be 10 times 0, which is 0, plus 2 gives you 2. So name to convert to. That's how I'm getting these pieces. Well, what's cool is that, you may say, dang, you have to do this 50 times. No, all I'm doing is 10 of them. And if I change GV count to 1, it's still changing these exact values. Watch what happens. This says Argentine peso. Well, watch what happens when I click on it. I bet you it's going to say Colombian peso. Because what has happened now, see, look, Colombian peso, it's taken GV count, which is now 1. So 10 times 1 is 10, plus 1 gives you 11. So it's now pulling name 11, or showing name 11 and convert 11. Well, let's go see. Now, be careful here. This is the first one, second one, third one, fourth one, fifth one, sixth one, seventh one, 8, 9, 10, and 11. Check it out. Colombian peso, and then it's pulling the 2924312. That doesn't match that, but again, once we go back and update everything, it will match up just fine. But that's pretty cool. I hope that makes sense there. Now notice how I am naming this stuff. Broadcasting for Tasker, I put the name in quotations, and then I want to tag on this name1, name2, or whatever it may be. And so if we bump all the way up to, let's go up to 5. All right, so GV counts 5. Well, this, if you remember our code now, if I go back to, and it did change it now, but GV count is 5. So what is this right here? 10 times 5 is 50, plus 1 is 51. So it's pulling the 51st name, and it's pulling the 51st conversion, currency conversion. Well, I'm going to start in here at the bottom and count backwards. Let's see if this is working right. 55, 54, 53, 52, 51. Check it out. Boom and boom. That's exactly what we see over here. It's good stuff. So the other items that we have up here for the text items, what you're going to have to be careful with here is that whichever one it may be, so this is number what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we want to do the GV count times 10, and then notice it says plus 8. So that's the whatever I'm adding on to it, that's what I'm changing in these codes here. If I come down to the bottom one, this is going to be GV count times 10 plus 10. So 10 times GV count plus 10. I hope that makes sense. So that's a way that you can tie in global variables into a tasker variable, if you will. And all of this stuff, if you see, it's really the JavaScript over in Tasker was very minimal in terms of the amount of actions we had to create in our task. And then over in KLWP, it's not really, we're not doing 50 pieces. We're doing 10 of them. But by us incorporating GV count into it, we can show as many as we want. And what should happen here? The way I have these buttons set up, should there be 70 conversions, it should pick all this stuff up as long as when I refresh it, you see the things refreshing right then? I just tap that thing right there. Let's refresh this page here and let's see if everything is matching up. But like I was saying, the way the GV count's tied into it, should it change, this right here should all change. If it becomes 70 pieces or 65 or 66 pieces or whatever, it should change. I guess time will tell, and to determine if the currency, if there's a different number of pieces in this table. But as you can see, Argentine peso, boom. What about the Canadian dollar? Boom, 1.332671. Yeah, great, good, works perfect. Going backwards, everything is there. So, a lot of variables going on here, or a lot of tying of variables, if you will. Stuff from Tasker, stuff in KLWP, and marrying them all together. And as you can see, this works fairly nicely. And there was one more piece that I failed to show you, but that's going to be the link. So for each individual, just like, for the Argentine peso, whatever we have here, the way I had the GV count times 10 plus 1 link there, or the way I have it tied in here, we want to do something very similar. So if we touch this text item, so if I go to touch, I want to open link, and this is being applied as well. So this is where we have to do the www.xrates.com, but then we broadcast for that other piece that we sent over from Tasker. Link, do you remember that in our JavaScript? So link, and it's that same code, whether it be GV count plus 1, GV count plus 2, GV count plus 3, but remember it's 10 times GV count plus whatever it may be. So since this one was the first one, plus 1, now let me back out and just show you one more. If I come down here to the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 Brazilian real, let's go to there. Again, look at the name, look at the convert, so the plus 5s are tied in there, and then if I go over to touch, open link, I got pretty much that same thing right there, 10 times GV count plus 5. And there you have it. That's a little tutorial on the HTML DOM as well as getting the currency conversions over from a source code, in this case xrates.com. And that's it for this video. I hope it helped.